99.5.
Last night I dreamt of San Pedro.
Asaase Radio 99.5. 99.5.
To a very special location. We're in Urim, which is a little village on the outskirts of Asaase in the eastern region. And as you can see, we're surrounded by greenery and trees, specifically cocoa trees. We're here to talk to the owner of the Ohene Cocoa Farms, Nana Eduna II, a Chiamehene of the Ekwapim traditional area, cocoa entrepreneur, physician, agitator, visionary, amongst other things. But we're here to talk to him about the farm. Thank you for asking me onto the farm, Nana Eduna.
And thank you very much for making it out here from Accra.
Oh, well, it's something that you're familiar with because, of course, it's a journey that you make. How many times a week?
Usually once, but occasionally twice a week. Yeah.
A long, hard road. What is it that keeps you coming back to this farm?
This place is magnetic. I mean, there's a certain peace that and tranquility that you experience when you come here. It's almost like a kind of a spiritual journey. So. And as the productivity and the place has improved, it's almost again magnetic, so it's very easy to come back. It's quite easy to come back.
You don't have to fight to come back.
No, on the contrary at all.
So tell us a bit about the story of the farm. I know you've spoken about this in other quarters, but just for the benefit of listeners. So this farm started out when?
The land, well, okay, more like around about close to 100 years. So we put it roughly around about 1922, incidentally. So next year is our 100-year anniversary. But yeah, so my forebears, predecessors, one particular, Nana Kofi Inchi, Achamina at the time, came this way. They got the land. They started with other families, tenant farmers, extras. So that's basically how this patch started. There's another family that came with, that's a Kofusu family. So we kind of share a border with them. So that's how they came here. In terms of course, it's been here for some time, productive but declined. So, but in terms of myself, in the last, since the year 2000, when I took over the mantle, and really was introduced to this place in 2003. And so since then, we've had to do some rehabilitation here, and right up to this stage, this is what we have. So that's a short summary of.
Now, you said your forebears, so this land has always been under cocoa cultivation as long as your family has owned the land.
Yes.
And you spoke about taking up the mantle. What was that taking up of the mantle?
Well, it was in terms of the chieftaincy or the head of family and the head of family responsibility. So that's...
So explain to us.
Okay.
In which year you became?
It was the year 2000, again, matrilineal system in terms of a CAN system. So I was fortunate enough to be selected to take over the mantle, and that's what I mean by went through the process of swearing allegiance to the paramounts in Kwapehine at the time, Nosiade and Anado Dankwa, the third of blessed memory. And then it was a matter of then doing one's traditional responsibilities to the overlord, plus taking over the family responsibilities of land, how to resuscitate, care for the family, etc. So I think our system is such that when you are given the mantle of leadership, you also privileged to be given certain material possessions and or property, and the responsibility or the onus is on you to use these properties responsibly and preferably productively. I am sure that politically we hear of something called Ejapa. Ejapa means a good father, basically. So once you're given the responsibility, head of family responsibility, I think that the important thing is to try to do something productive with whatever you are handed over to.
You have older brothers, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So how come you were selected and they weren't?
I think that they had an option to say yes or no. And so in that discussion, again, these are private discussions, but by the time it had gotten to me, it means all the others had either declined for some reason or the other, or not considered suitable. So that's how it's.
So for you, it's not just farming the land or even ownership of the land, you're a custodian of the land.
Yes.
You're a custodian of the land. Do you see it as for your immediate family, for a clan, for Okuapemai? How does it work?
I think that it's for all of the above. I suppose it is how you then utilize the proceeds. That's why it's important for the land to generate proceeds, so that it can then take care, whether it is Okuapemang in terms of buying schnapps to make sure that I present to my overlord at the right time, or supporting the family with respect to renovation of family house, plus expansion with respect to, again, Ohene Cocoa is a company that we're developing out of this. We look forward to it being becoming a global brand, growing, etc. So then it also then takes care of other responsibilities. Yeah.
So you have how many acres under cultivation here?
Here, roughly about 45 acres of cocoa here, and counting, because we are busy extending and expanding a bit more. So here, roughly about 45 acres. Yeah.
That's big by most cocoa farm standards, isn't it?
Because yes, it is big.
Most cocoa farmers in Ghana are on 2 or 3 acres. Or
I think a lot of the times, again, those are the small holdings. That's how our system has evolved. I think that in that respect, again, as the landowner, you have smallholder tenant farmers extra. Now it is up to us to be able to aggregate the our land ownership and be an active part of it. So yes, generally they are smallholder units, but there are some people who have much larger lands than myself, and yeah. In terms of,
Do you see that as an advantage or disadvantage? I mean, for example, a lot of people talk about how in Cote d'Ivoire, they have cocoa plantations, like, rubber plantations established in Sierra Leone or elsewhere. Do you think that if cocoa farmers were to restructure how they work and maybe have bigger size farms which could be farmed commercially and which venture capital companies could get involved, that that's a way forward, or would we be losing something?
I think that, you're beginning to touch on land ownership, and that's another angle also, or that's another aspect altogether. I think that for us to make the right progress in terms of, again, larger holdings or commercial productivity, etc., it's not necessarily even the large structure, the mechanization in inverted commas, but it is more about how you organize and involve and how much you supervise what farm you for whatever farm you have. I mean, there are very successful farmer cooperatives in Ghana that are able to pull themselves and their resources together. So in that respect, it's very much about one, how you relate to your tenant farmers or those who you're working with, and importantly also the supervision. I think that what I think done differently, because I think we're talking earlier on about the legal entities, or the legal what words should I use? Whether it's tenancy agreement, whatever that we employ in cocoa. Now, historically there have been two. There's been the Bunu system, and there's an Abusa system. A Bunu is 50-50. That's 50 proceeds to the landowner, 50 proceeds to the tenant farmer, and then there's a Busa, which is 2/3, 1/3. What I have basically done is, and when the 2/3, 1/3, you provide all the inputs. The tenant farmer just tills the land. The 50-50, the tenant farmer is actually supposed to find everything and take care and use it. But what I've done is I've actively provided all that needs to be done with respect to whether it is seedling, spray, whatever, and make sure that the work gets done. So whether it's time to spray, whatever, or inputs that are needed. But then we still maintain a 50-50, whatever, after the deduction of the costs. That supervision actually makes the big difference between just leaving the tenant farmer to do as and how he pleases, and you arriving just to collect your share proceeds, which is what we have gradually, the kind of arrangement that we've gradually slipped into, as against being an active participant and collaborator in terms of making sure that you come, you see the thing being done, but then at the same time reward people who you're working with appropriately for their efforts. Yeah.
So it's like the difference between an absentee landlord and somebody who is engaged and involved, like yourself, with the process of farming week to week, year in and year out.
Yes.
Is that engagement something that is, you've explained why it works for you? Is it something also to do about the way you relate to people anyway?
I think it's a combination of the two, but it also has to do with enjoying what you're doing. I mean, it's really, because if there was no passion and joy plus a plan and strategy to see the returns, then this would be almost like a slog. But because clearly one is enjoying this too, there's a plan to see the real returns of, in terms of what we can do and use cocoa for. So I think that makes my application to this whole exercise. I think I apply myself a lot more.
So you took over in the early 2000s, as you said, when you got made a Chiamahine, and you found the land covered in diseased trees pretty much. Can you briefly just describe the process you went through of clearing the land?
First and foremost, let me say that it was like a war. No, to put it bluntly and mildly. I mean, here's this new young chief who comes, and there are these trees that have been there for 60, 70 years that we do get something out of it. Might not be much, but then you just come and you want to come and just cull them and clear whatever the disease. The point I'm making is, again, I'm experiencing why a lot better now, but there's an emotional attachment to these trees, and so unless you are brutally logical and scientific and whatever, to actually then cut them all down, stuff. Anyway, so basically we there was this project that went on with that started cocoa rehabilitation, I think somewhere in the early 2000s. So basically it was culling the tree right to the lower base of the stem and treating it with what we call an arboricide, which basically kills the tree off, and then waiting for a little bit of time, creating a barrier before replanting.
So you say it was a war. Was it a war with the people on the farm because they didn't want you to cut down the trees?
Yes, it was. It was actually. It was actually. I mean, to the extent that yes, and again at the time, those who were instructed to do had certain schedules actually. But as soon as there was any conflict or any potential trouble on the land, and so this, like I said, the whole process delayed for some time until we actively moved in and did the culling ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean, it was literally coming with the chainsaws and doing it ourselves.
How many trees do you reckon you cut down?
Well, I suppose if you are saying that we replaced initially about 20 acres, and then we did another 15, and then we did another 10 over time, then and if you're taking roughly cocoa is 400 trees per acre, so you just multiply whatever number that we did by 400 and you get an idea of, yeah.
And then you started planting?
Yes.
And how many trees did you plant in the first year?
Okay, this whole project started around 2004. So the plot that we went in, the older trees, that was the first lot that we did. Then the second real lot was in 2010. That was really when there was real antagonism and commotion. Once we finished that batch and others started to see the fruit of the result, subsequently from about 2014, 2015, I mean, where we are right now is about 4 years old. So this is relatively new. So, I mean, subsequently we've seen less of such resistance and activity, yeah.
And I mean, I noticed that the tree in front of which you're sitting it's just, how many pods are there on that tree? I mean, there's something like over 20. What is it that, have you got some secret in the land that kind of makes that
I suppose I would have to call the one who runs this place, Mr. Malik, to come and explain. But the honest truth, the secret behind this place is real organic manure. Malik has cattle as well. So he runs, so a lot of this is actually consistent cow dung. Plus, of course, the basic care in terms of pruning, but a lot of this patch is really down to just good, almost natural organic care.
In terms of fertilizer, but just completely natural stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And you were explaining about the ecosystem of what you've got here. So you do have some bigger trees in the neighborhood. So over there you had, is that an emery? You said it is?
Yes, that's emery. Yeah, the straight one there is emery. Yeah.
And you have what other kinds of trees?
There is a from, there is some old odum somewhere. There's what we call Nchinengo. That's like it's like a white and yellowish type of tree. Locally, it's called Nchinengo, which basically means salt and palm oil. And then, which other tree? Then, of course, there's plantain and banana trees. There's avocado. There are oranges. So there's a whole mix. And I think that, again, the important thing is that cocoa is not a monocrop. Cocoa thrives best in a good agroforest environment where there is a balance. And so what you are witnessing and seeing here is actually a significant attempt to rebuild an agroforest ecosystem, but productive based on the viability of the cocoa in there.
So you started replanting, you said the real battle was in 2010. When you started planting, did you know from the moment you put in the seedlings that you had something that would grow into what those of us who are city girls and boys know as ohene cocoa, which is beautifully finished products?
No, not at the time. Not at the time. I think that dawned on me a lot more when the wonderful returns I was expecting from Cocoa Board, or in terms of selling out the beans, just the beans, it wasn't coming as quickly as I would like it to. And so then I was asking myself very tough questions. And of course, when you also realize how much you've put in terms of
labor,
the labor, inputs, spraying, etc., transport costs up and down every week, etc. When you actually factor all that in, you haven't even talked about the cost of land. You haven't even talked about factoring the cost of land. When you factor in all those inputs, and then you see how little you get from the producer price in terms of one bag of beans, then you start asking yourself, but economically, does this make sense? Are we missing something somewhere? So as you ask yourself the questions each year, then you start to find out, but you see the price of a bar of chocolate, then you say, but what's really in this thing? I think what really, for me, the light bulbs kind of switched on really was when I realized, but there's been this shift towards dark chocolate. Now there's been this shift towards 80% or 70% cocoa solids, extra. So I was asking myself. So then I started reading more about the health benefits of cocoa, and then I said, but so the reason why they're moving more towards more cocoa solids or more cocoa in there is because that's actually the good stuff in there. Then I said, but we have 100% of the stuff sitting there. So that 100% is of some serious value. So then you work backwards and you say, but what are the simple things that you can use what you actually have for? And so that's where the whole idea of making finished products, Ohni cocoa and the branded products comes from. Yeah.
So you talked about how little you got from selling on your beans. Where were you selling? We noticed produce buying company.
Yes. So there are a lot of there are quite a number of the major LBCs around here, but we were dealing primarily with the produce buying company. Yes.
Right. When you say LBCs, you mean
licensing buying companies. Yes.
Okay. And you then decided to start making something with what you had to see whether you could get more value out of it. How did you start?
Started with ideas about trying to grind the beans into something or the other, and then we came up with simple nibs, coconut. And incidentally, around that time, the one I started with brought some sweetened cocoa nibs from the US, so these were just the nibs that had been crushed but had been flavored and sweetened.
Sweetened with what? Sugar?
Well, sweetened with sugar cane. Yeah, so that was brought from the US. So after we'd crushed that, we tried to do a similar thing. We just pineapple, we tried banana, we tried various things. Initially it tasted good, then it started getting moldy, of course, because we're not doing usually good biochemical processes. Then we said no, but surely, again, looking at the healthcare benefits of just the plain nibs, I mean, the plain nibs themselves have a market. So now it became even simpler and easier in terms of, okay, crushing the nibs, taking the stuff off, and then using it for or packaging it and selling it. Then the other ideas started coming up with making our cocoa crunch, which we thought about doing something very simple, but also aimed at something that the Ghanaian market kind of knew or understood already, which
so just to explain, cocoa crunch is a bit like in Kati cake.
Yes.
But the base is cocoa nibs, and then you mix it with other ingredients to flavour.
Yes.
So you do how many kinds of cocoa crunch?
We do 4 types at the moment, 4 different flavors. There's the ginger, there's the coconut, there's the just plain cocoa, and then there is the peanut or groundnut.
Okay, so it's the cocoa farm, and I'm told it's such inland, even though it's supposed to be the Akrapan Hills. It started raining, and so I would love to continue sitting out here, but our producer insists that maybe we should take a little bit of a break. So we'll just take a break. Join us again in a moment on Sunday night.
Asaase Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
With the cocoa tree disease, we can see that government has tried very well to educate farmers and also support in its fight. But then, I know countless times you've had a problem with how we produce our cocoa and not just export the raw beans. Would you say that looking at the several calls that have been made, government is paying a listening ear to it and then looking more at refining our beans?
Well, I think, again, okay, first and foremost, you are now on a cocoa farm.
Yes.
This is money.
It's all cocoa.
This, live from here, this is the leaves, right up to the outer pod.
The pod.
The outer pod. Huge cash. This already is fertilizer for the cocoa itself, plus you can use it for other things. The pod, broken, this is cash.
The pod
This is
itself.
what, yes, this is what first and foremost, going ground into pellets, fish feed,
Okay.
fish farming, very nutritious. When it dries, you see the black, whatever, that's what they use for black soap.
Okay.
Crash, alaka sanga.
Ah.
Yes. This one is what they use. This is the potash.
So what we
addition to
think
that-
is a damaged pod.
Yeah. In addition to this is also potash as a fertilizer. Okay. So already 1, 2, 3 biofuel energy. Biofuel energy. Okay. So that's 4 things already.
We've not even
We've
gotten
not
to the
even
seeds.
gotten to the no. We've not even gotten to
The
it. Then
beans
you
itself.
have this one. The beans.
The beans.
As you toast them, sweet, when you're able to collect the pulp of the beans, wine, jam, now being used as a sweetener for chocolate. So we haven't even touched any brandy. The works.
Yeah, and they're utilizing it.
Okay. So now you get to the bean that we've fermented and dried, which we only focus on. Because that's what somebody told us a long time ago. But that's what they want.
Asaase Radio 99.5, the voice of our land.
Welcome back to Sunday night. Before we went off on the break, you saw we got caught in a little bit of a rainstorm, which I was happy to sit out in, but our producers insisted for the equipment's sake we needed to find another location, and we really have found the most beautiful of spots on the Urim farm, to which we've been invited by Nana Iduna II, here on the outskirts of Asamankisi. This is your bamboo hideaway, is it?
Yes, we call it the bamboo grove. Yes, but I suppose it's hideaway is a good description. Yes.
It's a completely natural site on the farm, or how did it come about?
Yes, I mean bamboo naturally grows, especially when one can see the stream behind. But yeah, bamboo is attracted to places where there's water and either standing or running water. So yes, this is a site we've protected over the years. We haven't culled any bamboo from here for a long time, and the idea was just to create or to allow it to create into a haven, and this is exactly what has happened. Yeah.
So you made the stream.
No. The stream actually comes right from the hills further up, and then there's a fair bit of underwater, what do they call it? Natural underwater spring also from some of the land. So it all just flows right into the stream here.
So that means you've got everything you need on the land. You've got crops, you've got the source of fertilizer from the cocoa and from the cows kept by Malik, your partner in creating and you've got the water.
Yes.
I mean, is there anything that you don't have here for the perfect cocoa farm?
I don't think so. I think that this is a jewel in terms of natural resources and a piece of land. So this is a place that we must treasure and we must really turn into a very productive oasis. Yeah.
So talking about your plans for diversifying, you were telling us first of all about your first range of products and the cocoa crunches. Now, we know since then that you have branched out into cosmetic products because, of course, one of the byproducts of cocoa is the butter. It's a very important part, plays a very important part in making cosmetics. You've had your body butters, you've made candles, you've made potpourri, and now you're thinking of a new line altogether. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I think that, again, I would imagine that we're talking about the ecotourism, which is a very exciting project. We've actually been working on it off and on, but it looks like it's also coming into its own with the support of the Ghana Tourism Authorities. So that definitely is very much It's important to emphasize it to be a very COVID-friendly environment, open air, natural breeze, plenty of social distancing when you do come on our trips, and also a lot of good natural, whether food or spices to have on this farm. So we're looking to develop this ecotourism product a lot more, and one of the places that we're thinking of is having a wonderful outdoor spa, or in this bamboo haven where you can actually use all the natural herbal from cocoa, we've got turmeric here, we've got some avocado here, we've got mango. So
no, but describe to me what you mean by using them in ecotourism. I mean, of course, those things are good to eat. You want to have tourists here, and what do you want them to do while they're here?
I think that there are many things to do here. First and foremost is going through the whole process of understanding first the history of the farm, understanding how cocoa is grown, how cocoa is processed, the side attractions with respect to seeing our seed farm, side attractions to seeing the origin of the stream and how it enters onto the land. There's sugarcane here. We're thinking of going to some sugarcane, not processing, but making sugarcane juice. Then there's a whole, even just we're working on labeling the trees, so you see the different types of wood, trees, etc. I think those will be the attractions on the farm, or some of the attractions on the farm. But I think in addition to that, we want to be able to fuse a cultural display. So whether, depending on the package or the audience, drumming and dancing with interpretation, libation pouring, so the works, just to make the experience Ghanaian and complete.
And in fact, you've done some of these things already.
Yes.
Before the COVID outbreak, which has thrown a lot of people's plans out of kilter. You have had parties of people visiting the farm, and what did you do for them?
Again, I think it was going through that simple experience of them experience what's happening on the farm, how cocoa is processed, grown, etc., taken history, welcome, extra. So nothing too different from what I described. What we're looking for to do is to add more and to make the experience a lot more worthwhile. Historically, I'm sure you'd have noticed, and maybe you've not been historic, but we've started naming the trails, we're just reorganizing stuff, so we almost upgrade the experience.
But what makes you think that this will be of any interest to anybody other than, say, agricultural science students or botanists?
Well, we are definitely going to make this I think it already is, but to market it as an attractive go-to destination where you can just escape, which is sometimes what we miss out in the hustle and bustle of the city.
So, of course, you have been a very vocal proponent of the position of independent cocoa producers, both smallholders and people farming cocoa on a larger scale like yourself. You seem to have some problems with the way the cocoa trade in Ghana is structured. I mean, this is at a time when we thought we had a great good news story from Cocoa Board with recent reforms introduced by Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. What are your major objections to the way the cocoa trade is organized?
I wouldn't describe them as an objection, but more or less a frustration, in the sense that we haven't structured, or things are not structured such that we can take full advantage of the value chain, and that would mean that we grow the beans, we give it to cocoa board, they export. I mean, cocoa marketing company exports to the big cocoa majors in the world. They then do with as they please. Now, what I think that what we would like to see will be policies that encourage us to diversify into value addition, and into value addition that is sustainable here and supply all kinds of products from cocoa to other people. I mean, for a very typical example, look, Cocoa Board and through Cocoa Marketing Company do not do business with anyone who wants less than 50 metric tons of cocoa at a time. So that already cuts out a large chunk of, there should be a serious look at breaking those numbers down for and I wouldn't even describe them as smaller players, but for the other players that are interested in smaller numbers in terms of whether it's cocoa beans and preferably value added products. So that's one I think one simple example. Again, it's beginning to happen gradually, but I mean, why in 2021 are we still using or still relying on cutlasses and manual labor? I mean, how does that become attractive to the young man who has a cell phone? So by now we should, I mean, these tricycles that you see around the place should be adjusted and motorized, etc., to suit the cocoa terrain. That's where our young engineers and etc. come in. But for that segment of the industry, whether it is mechanization, whether it is technology, etc., to be viable, especially to support, so one would say almost the cocoa support services, those services should be paid for, and those services should be paid for to entrepreneurs who then develop the technology, etc. But if it's a fixed price for a product that is sold to almost a statutory monopoly, which is government, and then government is now, or Cocoa Board is now supposed to be the one that is going to buy these machines, and then the farmers are unable to either understand why they have to change the way to do things, etc. So there's a lot of need for reform, and like I said, it's beginning to happen in certain ways. I know they're talking about this cocoa management system, etc., where they're trying to privatize some of the services, etc. But in the way that it would attract, again, younger, brighter minds, someone would say, show me the money and show me how I can make a viable living, not, and plus, if I want to get fabulously wealthy out of this, show me how I'm going to do it. I mean, again, I say fabulously wealthy, but others have gotten fabulously wealthy. Others that do not grow or do not have cocoa have grown fabulously wealthy from our cocoa. So why can't we, who, and then when I say our cocoa, I'm talking about the Cargills, the Nestle's, the big, they've grown, Linds, whatever they've grown over the years, they've grown rich from our raw material because they're primarily trading, or whether in chocolate, etc., and cocoa. What stops us from being the beneficiaries of our own natural process? And to that extent, one's agitation and frustration is that we are still very much operating on the colonial model. Now, that's not serving us any good. After the raw material is still here, the raw material is not growing in Switzerland or it's not growing elsewhere. If anything, they're the ones telling us how to grow it. It's high time that we made it work for ourselves so we also get fabulously wealthy, whether as individuals or as a country.
When you say a colonial model, what do you mean?
I think that the president summarizes it quite nicely. The Gettysburg economy, which basically is extracting raw materials to be shipped over to the colonial powers for them to then refine, utilize the best part for themselves, and basically resend the dredges back to us. That's the Gettysburg model.
It's National Chocolate Week. How do you intend to market?
Well, I intend to market because unfortunately we do have a single origin chocolate brand that we've come up with, and that's really been in collaboration with Asaase. Asaase Sweets Chocolates they're a company based in Kumasi, and also with Seco Chocolates. I think again first and foremost, chocolate honesty is not our product, and when I say it's not our product, in the sense that it's not originally an African food product, etc. That's why seriously you've got to keep it in cool temperatures, otherwise it will melt. Okay, and also just the whole process of making it is quite laborious, and depending on how you want to make it, it's expensive. Now, yes, but it's still the most popular thing that's made out of our cocoa. So yes, why not? And again, I think we had a discussion about our crunch earlier on. We think that when our crunch has got to the production maturity stage that we hope to get it to, that it would compete very favorably, or to some extent, depending on who the audience is, actually outshine certain chocolates because of the 100% cocoa content and the health benefits, etc. So yes, fortunately, we are in the chocolate market as well. And importantly, we have a single origin chocolate, which basically means you can trace the chocolate right to the source on this farm, which means that we know how it's grown, we know what goes into the beans, etc., etc., etc. And that, unfortunately, when something is single origin, it usually is more expensive, and in that respect also, it's not necessarily available in the mass. Yeah. So we're looking forward to Chocolate Day and to a very selected targeted market. Yeah.
It would also suggest, if you're concentrating on the bean to bar, as it's termed, end of the market, single source chocolate,
yes,
that it's aimed for an expatriate or an export audience.
Not necessarily. I mean, they are very discerning Ghanaians who enjoy that or a good product in that respect. So yes, for anyone who's discerning enough to afford it, and there are quite a number of Ghanaians who've opted for that, who've enjoyed it, and as well as expat market would mean Ghanaian or Africans, Ghanaians in the diaspora. It would mean Europeans themselves. It would mean Americans. It would mean Chinese, and yes, those who do chocolate know a good chocolate when those who know chocolate know a good chocolate when they taste one, and there's no doubt about the fact that our single origin chocolate is worth tasting and going after.
Some would say that you're being very greedy and you're trying to cover all the bases because you now do a cocoa wine to go with your chocolate.
That's not greed? I think that's just taking advantage of the availability of the raw material, and I think importantly also being extending oneself to work with collaborators, because the cocoa wine or the alcohol part of it is done by the Volta Winery, which is a collaborator, and so in that respect, it's another line extension that we've gotten involved in because we are fortunate enough to have the raw material.
So, can you tell us what is your favourite thing made from cocoa by other people? What's your favourite thing?
What's my favorite thing made from cocoa by other people?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a tough one.
Okay, what's your favourite thing made? What's your favourite
Should I
thing?
tell you honestly?
Honestly.
Bioco's Gary chocolate.
Gary and peanut bar. Yeah. Okay. How do I get? And what is your favourite thing made from cocoa that you make yourself?
The favorite thing from cocoa that we make ourselves, for me, would be the cocoa husk tea.
One of the things you've spoken about is, if you like, the imbalance of the way prices are fixed. From your point of view as a cocoa farmer, but also as somebody who has a bigger perspective on the whole business of cocoa buying and making things with cocoa. What is, or who are the key figures, if you like, in the value chain, you called it, from this level on the cocoa farm to, say, Cocoa Bod as the aggregator of all cocoa purchases in the country? Which is the most crucial factor and which is the most dangerous? If you
Okay, from the farm level, once it's dried, fermented, dried properly, then it goes to the purchasing clerk at the licensing buying company. That's the interface with the farmer. Okay.
the interface
now,
between the farmer and who?
the licensing buying company is the purchasing clerk. Okay. Now, again, historically, they've used mechanical scales for the weighing. Ideally, Ghana Standards Authority should go around calibrating these scales, but unfortunately, that doesn't happen as often as it should. And so, what happens is some of the licensing buying company, the purchasing clerks, do make some adjustments to the scale. So, for example, I mean, if a bag weighs 64 kilos, so if the adjustment is such that for each bag that you bring, there's an adjustment of 2 or 3 kilos for the purchasing clerk. So by the time somebody's brought, or by the time a couple of farmers are brought, 10 bags, 20 bags, okay, for 100 bags, that's easily 200 kilos. That's 3 bags of cocoa. That's, at today's prices, that's almost 2,000 Ghana cedis, So take a little off here, take a little off here. So that's almost like an embedded system of corruption that's pertained in the cocoa industry or the cocoa sector for some time now. One of the ways in which I went around that was that I actually went to get an electronic scale, and so we weigh our cocoa with the electronic scale ourselves.
You invested in that as a bit of equipment on the farm.
Okay. Then from the LBC's purchase clerk, it then goes to quality control. And then it goes through some quality control checks, etc. Then it's bagged and shipped to the warehouse for export.
So, what do you think can be done, or who should be primarily responsible for? You mentioned Ghana Standards authority maybe not paying as much attention as one would ideally like to just checking the scales and making sure that they're in order. But should there be a regulator? Should the purchasing clerks be obliged to go through some system of checks, and who should run that system?
It's very simple. Electronic scales. Very simple electronic. I mean, because it's almost it is quite difficult to make the adjustments to electronic scales. I mean, if it's buggered, it's buggered. But it's and in actual fact, again, that's one of the policies Cocoa Board is encouraging. Electronic scales are not cheap, and especially the high volume ones that I used to, they're not cheap. So that's a significant investment as well. But electronic scales, as opposed to the manual ones. So
is there an opening there again for an entrepreneur?
Yes. Again, these are the things that, again, even if it means somebody buys the scales and rents them out and makes, there are opportunities right along the value chain.
I would say, thank you very much.
Thank you too,
Nana Eduna, for welcoming us to the farm at Orem. I could happily sit here for another few hours.
I was just going to say that now.
But I think
now we all don't want to go since we even have light and we have water.
Why would one want to go back into possible doom in the city and possible water problems when you have your own stream here and the wonderful lights? But thank you very much for welcoming us and for showing us what you're doing on Orem Farm and Ohene Cocoa Farms, and more power to you.
Thank you.
So you've been joining us on Sunday night in Orem, on the outskirts of Asamankese, on Achim land, I'm told, but in the Ekriapim Hills. We've been in the company of the Achamahine of the Ekriapim traditional area, Nana Eduna II, who's been telling us about his long journey and his adventure on this farm, a family farm, how it was lost, how it was recovered, and how he brought a diseased land back to fruition and made it the wonderful place we see today with all its potential in it. Thank you very much for joining us on Sunday night.